Hello, I'm Femi OK, and you're in the stream. Today, how should Catholic countries in Latin America handle abortion? An 11-year-old girl is pregnant after being raped by her mother's boyfriend. Now, because she lives in Chile, the girl who is being called Berlin cannot have an abortion, even in the case of rape. Doctors say that her life and the life of her unborn baby are at risk. Berlin spoke to Channel 13 in Chile this week, and they've released that interview exclusively to Al Jazeera.
Hoy va a ser como una muñeca tener en mis brazos. Pero bueno, la voy a querer mucho, que sea lo que sea, o que sea de ese hombre que me hizo daño, igual o mal la voy a querer, la voy a cambiar, voy a hacer muchas cosas.
After her mother claimed the relationship was consensual, Berlin spoke out against her attacker.
Y él llegó como si nada y llegó y me empezó a tocar como, no sé, como si nada, sin hablar, nada. Y después yo dije, le voy a decir a mi mamá, y él llegó y dijo, si tú le dices a tu mamá, le voy a matar a tu mamá y a tu hermanito. Y del puro miedo para que no me maten a mi madre y a mi hermanito, no dije nada.
Malika Bilal, this is an extraordinary story. As our digital producer, what is our online community saying about it?
Well, the story is definitely touching them, and they're intrigued, and they're asking a lot of questions, some of which look like this Facebook comment from Ezequiel, who says, if eventually Belén is allowed to deliver that child, here are some questions that need to be answered. Can her reproductive system handle pregnancy and childbirth? And will the girl be shielded from stigmatization? We'll get into all of those questions and the answers in this show, but for those of you at home, we want you to join in with your own questions or comments. Use the hashtag AJStream.
So in Central and South America, Chile is one of 7 countries in the region that forbid abortion for any reason. Most other Latin American countries allow for abortion in rare exceptions. In some countries, having an illegal abortion will land you in jail. Latin America is mostly Catholic, and the church policy condemns abortion and excommunicates members who have or perform the procedure. So bearing all of this in mind, what's the future of abortion rights in Latin America? Joining us to talk about this from Santiago, Chile, is Lydia Casas, a law professor at Diego Portales University and an area coordinator for the Human Rights Center. In our Google Plus Hangout from Colombia, we have Alejandra Cardenas, a legal advisor at the Center of Reproductive Rights. Paola Araceno is in Concepcion, Chile, and she's an embryonic researcher with the Melissa Institute, and it's affiliated with the Catholic University of the Most Holy Conception. And Domingo Carbon is in in Santiago, Chile, and he's a public relations representative with Siempre por la Vida, or the Always for Life organization. Domingo, I'm going to start with you. Do you remember when you first saw the story of Belén? What was your reaction?
Yes. Well, it wasn't a surprise, actually. We've seen many cases like this in Chile. This isn't new. But then again, what I was most amazed by was actually the attitude that the Belén herself had about the baby. She said she wanted to have him. She said she wanted to protect him. And we believe this is something that has to be respected. And although we have to protect her right to have this baby, I believe Chile, and any country actually, should move towards helping her with these babies. And this is not just giving them money, but assuring them healthcare, medical healthcare, not just in physical means, but also mental healthcare. And also, of course, supporting them once the baby has arrived. We can't just prohibit abortion and then just leave it at that. We have to prohibit abortion in order to secure life, but then we have to help them carry on with that, with that new family, actually.
So, Lydia, what Domingo is saying is a very popular line of thought in Chile, but it's not what everybody's thinking.
Well, certainly not. In the social media, what you are seeing is outrage. Outrage that talking about that a girl like Belén would, in fact, even if she chooses, and under Chilean law, in fact, she cannot choose, that she is obliged to keep a pregnancy that is a result of rape. And certainly what Belén needs is protection. And protection that has been denied, everybody's saying that, it's been denied certainly by her core family. Her mother certainly is talking about consensual sex. She's been raped by her mother's partner. And the grandmother keeps talking about that the girl is going to have the baby. And what you heard on the news is Belen saying that she's going to take care of the baby as if it were her doll. And the most outrageous thing that it did happen yesterday was our president talking about that Belen was a mature girl that decided to keep a baby. I think that the president is saying something beyond belief to many people that are hearing us throughout this program.
Right.
Well, Alejandra, I'd like you to pick up on what was just said, specifically on what Domingo said on protect her right to have a baby, because our community is pushing back on that, saying that she was a minor. Asina on Twitter says, this is such a sad situation. The poor girl at 11 should not have to deal with this. And there's a video comment. Alejandra, have a listen to this and let me know what you think.
From what I've been able to pick up, I think that people in Chile agree that she should have a baby, but only because she said she was willing to do it. I think that the common line of thought in the beginning was that she should have an abortion because of the fact that she is so young. But according to current legislation, she has no other choice but to have the baby. But if abortion was legal, would it be her choice to make being so young? Would it be her mother's or a doctor's or a courtroom's? I think that the fact that she's a minor makes it really complicated.
So Alejandra, being a minor, of course, that does complicate things, right?
Yeah, definitely. But I would like to say two things. One is that the Committee on the Rights of the Child has called upon states repeatedly to consider reviewing restrictive abortion laws to permit abortions for girls who have been raped or who were victims of incest, but also in situations in which their health and life is at danger. A pregnancy of an 11-year-old is a high-risk pregnancy. So an intervention in this case would be the necessary medical treatment for preserving her personal integrity, but also for responding before a situation in which she is already a victim of sexual violence. She's obviously incapable of consenting sex. An 11-year-old cannot be capable of consenting sex. But also she's unable to understand the consequences of continuing with this pregnancy. Of course, all of that doesn't matter because in any case, Chilean law doesn't allow for abortion under any circumstances. So even if she wanted to consider that, and even if her grandmother wanted to consider the possibility of preserving her personal integrity, the personal integrity of a girl, this is the child we should be caring for. This is the child that exists and that we should be caring for, but she doesn't have any options because the Chilean law doesn't allow for options for women who are under these circumstances. And many other human rights committees, including the Committee Against Torture, have said that situations like this subject women to cruel and inhumane treatment.
Right. Domingo, I can hear you thinking right now.
Okay.
Yes.
May I say something?
Yeah, please go ahead.
About this?
Domingo, we'll come back to you. Hello, Paula.
Okay.
Jump in.
So in terms of the situation that Belen is living, this is a terrible situation for any woman, not only minors, but any woman who has to face a pregnancy that is a result of a sexual violent act. Is a horrible, horrible situation. So the first thing, of course, is to provide support for this woman to deal with this sexual act. Then, what is the support that we are providing? Some people say that abortion is a solution for this terrible, terrible situation because she's a minor, because she may have health issues, because being 11-year-old and the Facebook people had it right, it's a very high-risk pregnancy. But even the health minister in Chile tells us that he has been appointed by the president to look and care for this child and her high-risk pregnancy in a way that her life is being cared for throughout the pregnancy. Today, with the advances,
I would like to jump in on that one.
Okay, Lydia, go ahead.
I think it's very important what Alicia had just said. It is true that the Minister of Health has said that he has been appointed by the president to look after the girl's health. In fact, the president also has said that the first priority for the government is the woman's health. And I must say that that's not the case. In either this case, neither the women's health when they are in danger. And abortion is not permitted at all. Why am I saying this?
Absolutely not.
Because in
I
fact,
do not agree. That's not the case.
Because in fact, what they are saying is that to extend the pregnancy to 20 weeks, so that if needed, they're going to have a premature birth. So it's not the girl's health that is looking after right now, and nobody's saying what is going to happen to Belen afterwards. Belen is going to go back to the same family surrounding that has been assaulted by. Whenever her mother is going to be around, even if she's in care by her grandmother, the stigma associated to her rape, the stigma associated to bringing up a child that is a product of rape, it will cause much more violence, ongoing violence, because of having been raped and then being forced to continue a pregnancy.
Okay.
There are two things that need to be said in this case specifically.
Yes.
The first thing is that in Chile, we have the second lowest number of deaths in pregnancy in all of America, and the best in Latin America.
Yes.
We're only behind Canada. Even in the US, more women die because of pregnancy. So the argument that women are dying in these cases is just not true by the numbers. And that is because in these cases, doctors in Chile actually act. If a woman, for example, has cancer in Chile and is pregnant, she will have chemotherapy. She will have treatment. And you don't see doctors on the streets going out, raising their arms and saying, hey, we can't give medical treatment to these women, because they actually do. So the argument that Belen is going to die or she's not going to have a medical treatment is just not true. That's just not a fact. She is going to have it.
Well,
so that's one thing.
Can I just say something
And the other
from the
thing,
perspective of
Domingo,
someone
let
who
me
has
just
been
bring in
working on
Alejandra.
these issues throughout the continent? I would just like to say quickly that 4.2 million women die every year in Latin America due to unsafe abortions in Latin America.
and yet not in Chile.
But also, recently we've had very good examples that have been very publicized in the news. Women in these other 4 countries that also forbid abortion under all circumstances. Women who had cancer, who were already mothers and were denied chemotherapy and were denied life-saving treatments because doctors prefer to preserve a developing life than saving their own lives, even if their own children were going to become orphans because of this.
That
And
may
we
be the
had
case.
already had the
I'm just going to ask everybody to just take a pause for a moment. Alejandra.
Luckily, international law and international courts have intervened to protect the lives of some of these women. So I would just have that perspective, because women are dying and women are being denied life-saving treatments because doctors are afraid of being prosecuted and they are not providing the care women need.
Okay, so Alejandra, Paula, and Domingo, and Lydia, I have and I hear this point, but this isn't a conversation just about Chile. I want to show you something back here on I've got a map of the world's abortion laws. And the areas that you see in green, these are the areas where there are no restrictions to abortions. Let's go, though, to South America, to Latin America, and the areas in red are where there are some of the greatest restrictions as far as abortion and abortion rights are concerned. And then down here, there's a little green spot here, which is Uruguay. So there is some change and there's some difference in the way that some other South American countries treat and view abortion and when a woman can have an abortion.
I want to make a point. You are correct in saying that things in Latin America have been changing over time. Certainly, we have seen that in Mexico City. We have seen that in Colombia. We have seen that in Uruguay. The point in this case, I want to make a point with respect to what Domingo said. It's not an issue whether Belen will die or not. It's whether Belen is being exposed to risks that are unnecessary. And I think that's the point. It's not whether Belen will die. Belen may die, but Belen is being exposed to risk. And when all the human rights committed to Chile have been said, is that Chile has restricted laws that do violate women's health integrity, women's health security of the person, that impose them cruel and inhuman treatment.
Okay,
and
Lydia, let Domingo respond to that.
I want to say a couple of scientific facts here. We at the Institute, we have very robust evidence that unsafe abortion has been greatly overestimated in Latin America. And when you go at the actual data that you can reproduce the information, that's a very important thing in the scientific method. You find that there's actual overestimation of the reality of clandestine abortion.
But Paula, even if it is underestimated, the fact is that people are still dying, women are still dying. On Facebook, Amy says too many women, whatever the number, are dying from under-the-table abortions. The times are changing. With that, so much Latin American policy. A tweet from Matthias who says, abortion won't be stopped by laws trying to legislate moral points of view. People will always do it. The question is safety and access.
Even just
Lydia, Paula, stop talking for a second.
Just let me go back to Chile. Chile with a restrictive law, and it does have health data. The health data indicates that in Chile alone, more than 34,000 abortions, women get hospitalized due to abortion. You may argue that, in fact, those women who get hospitalized due to abortion in Chilean hospitals are not to do with clandestine abortion. You may say, in fact, that some of them will be miscarriages. It might be true, but also you will have a large number of women in this country undergoing illegal abortion that will get complicated and will expose women to risk. Not to mention, of course, the number of women that do have illegal abortion under safe conditions. You in Chile can have
the fact that this is happening is not a good enough reason
for 4 million pesos.
Lydia,
that is $5,000.
take a pause so that Domingo can jump in. Domingo.
Thanks. The fact of the matter is that even if this is happening, there are two things that are important. First, these women are getting medical treatment and are not dying. We have the best numbers. Lydia can talk all day, but people aren't dying in Chile.
Okay.
That's just the facts. And the second thing that's important is that we're not willing to kill a human being because there was, first, yes, an injustice. Rape, I agree, is a terrible crime. But we cannot kill that baby because of what his father did. We cannot punish
Domingo,
a baby
I've got that. Lydia, I've got that. I want to bring it Alejandra.
Thank you. I would just like to, emphasize that all these numbers are numbers provided by the World Health Organization. So I wouldn't dare to dispute their numbers. But I would like to say is that what has changed recently is that constitutional courts protecting human rights have began to liberalize abortion laws throughout Latin America. And this has been the case not only in Colombia, but also in Brazil and Argentina. So slowly we've seen an acknowledgement that these are human rights issues in that women need to be protected. And also another thing that I think is very interesting for the audience to know is that belief and this insistence in protecting this developing life, it has caused in some countries to ban even in vitro fertilization and also some forms of contraception. Because unfortunately, at the root of the beliefs of the people who are fighting to keep abortion illegal and to restrict reproductive rights throughout the region is that women are just instruments of reproduction, that we don't have human rights. And luckily, the human rights courts have begun to see this as a human rights issue and have begun to protect.
So this is what I'm hearing right now. I'm hearing Alejandra and Lydia explaining why more abortion rights are important, not just for Chile but for also Latin America. I'm hearing Paolo and Domingo saying that it's the life of the child that is really, really incredibly important. I'm not hearing where there's any compromise or possibilities for compromise. Paula, can you help me out with this?
Okay.
Well, in our particular case,
there's only one person in this conversation called Paula.
The American court recently framed this issue. The American court said that
everybody, Paula, Alejandro, Domingo, stop for 1 second. All right, everybody stop. I don't hear compromise. There's the example. Let me start with Paula. Help me out with some compromise here.
Well,
Okay,
certainly.
so here
Only one person's called
here
Paula. Only
we're
Paula
talking
can respond.
Sure. We're talking about risks, and Lydia said something about risks. And sure, there is a health risk with Belen, but there's also a risk of mental issues that we will add to the whole mental and psychological problem that Belen will have because of the history of violence and sexual abuse.
So, Paula,
that
I
we're
hear you
going to
advancing
add.
your argument. I do not hear compromise. And this is a major issue, not just for Chile, but for the whole of Latin America, for the whole of the region. Help me out with some compromise.
The compromise goes when you respect the rights of the mother and the unborn child.
And explain how that
when
happens.
The compromise
That's no
goes.
compromise.
All right.
Lydia, I actually want to get your thoughts on that based on this tweet. Abdusamad says, abortion should only be the option if the baby is going to be affected or if the mother will be affected. It shouldn't be abused. So, Lydia, can you bring us to a minimum, a bare minimum of compromise, as Femi was saying, of where we can look forward to?
Well, I think in the case of Chile, where there is no abortion allowed whatsoever, you should have to really look into all those considerations, such as rape, health condition, the risk of the women, and certainly when the fetus is completely unformed and has no viability out of the woman's womb. And so far in this country, none of these options are available to women, and those should be available. When you are saying that the only compromise is to have the baby, the unborn baby, protected, basically you are denying women's right to health and bodily integrity.
I didn't say only. I didn't say only. I said both. You have two humans here in front of you, and physicians today in Chile are completely able to deal and compromise the health, to not compromise, but to get to weigh and make decisions, ethical decisions regarding the life of the mother and the unborn child. And that's what
certainly not in the case of rape. Let me say you, whenever there is a case of rape, women's mental health is not protected. Women
Don't
are
you
not
just love
allowed
it when you
to
have a debate in stereo? This conversation will continue at stream.aljazeera.com. Do you need any headache tablets yet? Malika, what's really interesting about hearing their passion in this debate is that abortion laws were very different. And they were only changed when General Augusto Pinochet and his regime came into power. Right. And if he hadn't, maybe we wouldn't even be having this conversation in the first place.
It's interesting you mentioned that. We just got this tweet in from Andrea. I morally don't believe in abortions, but feel that no government should have control over any human being's body, which is going to get us into an interesting discussion in the post show on the role of government, the role of the church, perhaps.
You also, Malika has a lot of experience on the stream, so she gives me a red flag for some conversations. What did you say in the editorial meeting earlier today?
This one was going to be heated on both sides, and it was.
And we have Lydia, we have Alejandra, we have Paula, and we have Domingo. I'm not sure these are going to be getting together for the conversation, but we're definitely going to continue it at stream.aljazeera.com. But I just have time to tell you about what we're doing on Monday. We're looking at racism and discrimination against the Roma people. They're Europe's biggest ethnic minority, and back in 2005, the European Union declared it was kicking off the decade of Roma inclusion. Now that sounds like progress, right? We will find out on Monday. Stay with us. We will be at the post show at stream.aljazeera.com. Thanks for watching. Hello again, this is the Streams Online Post Show where we're talking about the future of abortion rights. The debate has been reignited by the case of 11-year-old Berlin, who became pregnant after being raped by her mother's partner. She's no longer living with her mother, she lives with her grandmother. Here's a clip of Berlin talking about what she would like to tell her mother, who claimed that the repeated rapes were part of a consensual relationship.
Bueno, que abra bien los ojos y que despierte, que todo lo que le diga es mentira lo que le dice su marido.
So Alejandra, I know that the laws and the abortion laws are changing little bit by little bit around different parts of Latin America, South America, the Caribbean. These are all areas where you work. What starts the little bit of change, the laws changing a little bit? What is it? Because I'm listening to the debate for Chile and I don't hear anything that feels like anybody's going to come together and compromise. What's your opinion about how things change a little bit?
I think that as societies become less sexist, women feel more empowered to talk about their painful experiences. And for example, here in Colombia, it was very key that women who had cancer and were denied chemotherapy when they were pregnant came out and started talking about how they wanted to keep living. Many of them, because they had children, you know, and obviously they needed this treatment and they wanted to have it. They started speaking out, and society listened about how these women were being denied abortions, and society started thinking about abortion and about how women's reproductive rights exist and how they need to be protected. And I would like to tell you an interesting fact. Latin America has the highest rate of abortions in the world, whereas Western Europe has the lowest rates of abortion in the world. So what is the difference between these two regions of the world? In Western Europe, abortion is legal. It has different changes a little bit in terms of the gestational limits, but it's legal. Whereas in Latin America, it's illegal. So that shows you that criminalizing abortion only makes women die. It doesn't stop women from having abortions.
Okay, I hear lots
what
of people...
We need is access to contraception, access to information. We need a different thinking about sexual violence, a different thinking about how women are human beings with fundamental rights and not just instruments of reproduction that the states and governments can control to have or not to have babies.
All right, Alejandro, as you were speaking, I heard lots of people sighing, and I'm not going to start the statistics data debate again, because I'm not going to live long enough, and I might want to maybe eat at the weekend. So nobody's talk about statistics or data anymore. Malika.
Well, Femi, Alejandra just had a long list of things that were things that she thinks needs to be changed, and our community's weighing in on that because they want to know what's the role of the church in all of this. There's a Google Plus comment from Annette who says, the Catholic Church has near complete control because the majority's lives are socially and spiritually set to the Latin America Catholic calendar framework way of life. The church does a great deal of good for society, yet a lack of female reproductive rights are disastrous. Paula, I want your thoughts on that.
Okay, so here's the metaphor for you. Even though there's a strong argument saying that the government shouldn't meddle with our bodies, the government has an obligation to promote policies that will better our lives. And the tobacco restrictions, I smoke, and that meddles with my liberties and my freedom to smoke. Restrictions on alcohol also, they also meddles with my freedom. I want to drink a cup of or drink or whiskey, and I cannot do that in certain situations. And I cannot smoke in public.
Well, restrictions, of course, are
venues.
different than not being able to do it at all, right? Restrictions are different than a blanket no.
That goes to the spirit of the restriction. The spirit of the restriction for smoking is not to meddle with the right to breathe of another being. And here in Chile, the restriction on abortion has to do with our freedom to make our decisions as long as they don't interfere with the rights of another being.
Paola, that's
And
a very
that's the
long
spirit of
metaphor,
the
which
law.
I'm going to interrupt just a little bit, because there are many women across Latin America who, if they have an abortion, they could be arrested, not only just excommunicated from the Catholic Church, but arrested and
Like in
spend
Chile.
time in jail. I heard that, yes. I want to play you a campaigning ad from Brazil that is campaigning to have some of the restrictions lifted in Brazil. If the mother's life is at risk, they can have an abortion. If somebody is raped, they can have an abortion. And if the child is going to be born with a severe deformity where their brain is not formed and they're going to die very quickly, they can have an abortion. Those are the only situations. And Brazil is campaigning, or some activists are campaigning for things to change. Just want you to have a look at this ad.
For or against abortion?
Contra.
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 Contra. Contra.
Contra.
Contra.
Totalmente contra.
Do you know anyone who has ever had an abortion?
Dessas.
Conheço.
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 Conheço. Conheço.
Conheço. Várias pessoas.
Should that person be arrested?
So, Domingo, you heard the silence there. I'm just curious about whether you feel, because you're so anti-abortion, I'm curious if you feel that women who do, doctors who help them, should they go to jail?
Thank you. In Chile, what we currently have, and I think we have the correct regulation, is that abortionist clinics are closed down, and that doctors, the ones that gave out abortions, are sent to jail. Yes, women are never sent to jail. You heard
That's not true.
Alejandra just said facts. I'm sorry. You heard facts
That's
that women
not
go
true.
to
I have
hospitals
official
with
statistics.
abortions. Can I continue, please?
Yes, please continue.
You have-
Everybody else be
you have-
quiet for a second.
You have heard that people go to hospitals after failed abortions. They are treated, they're not sent to jail. You don't see women in Chile marching on the streets saying, hey, I spent 5 years in jail because I had an abortion. That doesn't happen. Again, it's the facts. I do believe that we should go against the doctors. That I believe. So
What do you
when
mean
people
go
say, hey,
against the
why
doctors,
would a
Domingo?
mother
Do you
go to
mean
jail
they should
because
go
of
to?
this?
Do you
She
feel the
shouldn't.
doctors
I
should go to
need to
jail?
contest. I need to contest Domingo's claim.
Okay.
I have just finished a human rights report for our annual human rights report in the University of Diego Portales, and I have interviewed women who have been convicted for undergoing an illegal abortion. There are figures, there are numbers of women, and who those women are, who in fact are prosecuted because of having an abortion. I'm not talking about women 10, 20 years ago. I'm talking about women currently under criminal
That just goes
prosecution
against our
because
case.
of having an abortion in Chile.
So, Domingo, you sidestepped the question quite nicely, because that doesn't happen in Chile, but we're talking about the whole of the region. We're almost at the end of the program here, so I just want you to give me a very direct response. Should women who have abortions, should doctors who give abortions go to jail?
I believe doctors should go to jail. I do not believe that the women that have had abortion should go to jail, mainly because sometimes it's things that society forces them to do. What I do believe is that we need to help those women to avoid that abortion, to not have the need to do that, right? And we do need to punish those doctors. I believe there are two people here, that's the women and the baby, and both need their human rights to be shared and to be supported.
All right, I have time just for one more person. Alejandro, we're almost out of time. I'm going to ask you to be very brief, but I know that you wanted to just jump in one more time, but briefly, please.
Whether women should not go to jail, of course. Women go to jail throughout Latin America for undergoing illegal abortions. And in the cases that they won't go to jail, in any case, the chilling effect of the criminalization makes for women to have unsafe and clandestine abortion that leads to, as I said, 4.2 million unsafe abortions, but also 1 million women hospitalized every year, suffering long-term healthcare consequences, and thousands of women dying. So that's what I would like the audience to think of when they think of what the effects of criminalizing abortion has in societies.
Okay, so we have Lydia, we have Alejandra, Paolo and Domingo. Thank you for a very spirited debate. And that conversation, that's just like a little snippet of what's going on in Chile right now. Let me just head back to the community, and Malika, final thoughts.
Well, they're wrapping up with how we started with Belén. Lots of tweets on her condition and well wishes for her future.
Thank you so much. So let's look ahead to what's happening on Monday. We look at racism and discrimination against the Roma people. They're Europe's biggest ethnic minority. And back in 2005, the European Union declared it was kicking off the Decade of Roma Inclusion. I know that sounds like progress, right? We will find out on Monday. Until then, you know where we will be. Stream.aljazeera.com, always online. Thanks for watching.